Welcome to a weekend edition of Bhagavad Gita Sadhana. The atmosphere is different on a weekend for some reason. As human beings, at least in this culture, we've done a wonderful job of delineating what is weekday and what is weekend, when they're just days. Interestingly enough, we may forget about that. We're looking at equanimity. Samatvam in Bhagavad Gita, the ability to find the constant, especially the constant within ourselves, and to hold on to that. Like, for example, why can't every day be a weekend? I mean, there may be practical reasons, but why can't we have that feeling? And this is something that Krishna, a spiritual advisor, is trying to convey to his best friend and disciple, Arjun. Being constant is very, very hard. As any of us who have tried to be, even just being constant in this daily practice, it's a challenge. I'm sure those of you who have tried to show up every single day at a consistent time have realized what a challenge this is, just to be steady state. Why? Why is this? Why is the human condition so hard? Why we commit to something and we say we're going to do it and we're going to be faithful to it, and then it falls apart, and then we blame ourselves. Why? Well, Krishna offers Arjun some insight to that in chapter 7 of Bhagavad Gita. We're going to be looking in the Song of Your Soul books, the poetic translation of verses 27 and 28 in Bhagavad Gita. If you're turning to that page or whatever, I'd like to take this time to say I'm dedicating today's practice to two people kind of on the opposite end of the spectrum today. One is someone who offered me a lot of support in an email, and one is somebody who's asking for a lot of support through a message. So today's practice dedicated to Deni and to Sumit Joshi ji and child Sanat. May this be of benefit to both of you and to all of you. So verse 27 and 28, Krishna says, "The pairs of opposites such as attraction and aversion snare all living beings at their birth. O child of hope, scorcher of foes, but those whose sins have been destroyed, who act with virtue freed from the delusion of the opposites, worship me steadfast in their vows." Ooh. So much is going on in these two verses. Let's see. I know it's the weekend, so I won't tie you up too long with too much talking. You can always look in the books for the commentary if you want more. So what Krishna is saying is all living beings, as soon as they come into this material world, as soon as they take on a body, become bound by the idea of the opposites. What does that mean? Well, if we look at human experience, for example, generally speaking, as soon as we come into this world, we're labeled one of two things. The first question anybody asks is it a girl or a boy? Even before we're born, this label is put on us. And I have to tell you, from working in the hospital, sometimes ultrasounds are wrong. And that makes for interesting reactions in the parents who expected one thing and got another thing when it's the same child, right? But already the opposite has been put on that child. So right, even before we're born, there are labels put on us. And as soon as we're born, they multiply. Is your child a quiet baby or a loud baby, a good baby, a bad baby, a this baby, or that baby? Okay. And we do take that in on some level. We get that from our parents, our caretakers, our family, whether chosen or biological. Even here, in the last line of verse 27, Krishna ironically refers to Arjun by two distinct titles, O child of hope. Arjun was born out of hope and prayer into this world and really brought his parents and his family a lot of joy. And then Scorcher of Foes, he's in a civil war. He's about to bring his family a whole lot of pain, too. Dichotomy. But one whose sins have been destroyed, who act with virtue, freed from the delusion of opposites. They worship me. Me is whatever, it's here in the capital in my translation, is whatever you consider to be the supreme. Whatever it is, even if it's nothingness. If there's nothingness, ultimately, where can opposites come from? It's all just nothing, right? So those who can get rid of the delusion connect with the ultimate and are steady in it. And I'm going to bring this up again. I've mentioned this before. Sin in Bhagavad Gita does not mean the same thing as sin in other spiritual texts like the Bible. Very different. Sin in Bhagavad Gita is anything that leads you away from your true self, and nobody has to punish you for it, because just by doing that act, you are punishing yourself. You're the one that has to forgive yourself. Very much like the TV show Lucifer, which I've referred to also. Okay. So we need to free ourselves from the delusion of opposites. Then we become steady. And other spiritual texts talk about the pairs of opposites snaring us young, and that this is something we have to overcome. Yoga Sutra, for example, talks about the idea of raga and dvesha, pleasure and pain, and how we as human beings label almost everything that comes to us, good or bad. I want to do it again. I never want to do it again. And even in the Bible, the idea of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil that shows up right at the beginning of humanity's journey. So this is something we all have to face. And I think it takes a little introspection to really realize the opposites that are ruling us, that we might not realize what kind of impact they're having. So, for example, I was reflecting on when I was born, there were, being the first child and the first grandchild, there were a whole bunch of projections put on me. But one that I think really sticks out as I reflect and has affected my whole life from that point on is I know my mother wanted me very much, and that, she and my father planned for me. So I was wanted. But when I was born, due to medical complications, uh, my mother thought I was dead, and that the baby that was me that they brought her was not hers, and she rejected it. Isn't that interesting? So I was both wanted and unwanted. And I think that opposite is played out a lot in my life. I like to feel wanted, don't we all? But for me, it's as soon as I start feeling unwanted, I want to get the heck out of Dodge. It's hard for me to swing back to that feeling wanted, to find that in myself. People must not want me. They say they do, but they really don't. So that's something I need to work on. We'll have time for contemplating what opposites might be governing you on so many levels. But first, balance, physically coming to the middle, dealing with the opposites in the body. Shall we? Let's see how tall I am today. Switch. All right, coming back. I have a goldfinch watching me today, by the way, supervising. So I invite you for the next 5 minutes to really contemplate an opposite that has really impacted your life. And what would life be like if you could move beyond that idea? Like for me, if I didn't depend so much on others, or I'm feeling that others want me or didn't want me around, what would my life be like? Let's find out for 5. Welcome back from that 5 minutes. I wonder how that went for you and if you became aware of any opposites that are really ruling your life. That been opposites perhaps put upon you by the world and its projections. And Mary Montram, I did notice that huge release of breath you talked about halfway through today. Thanks for pointing that out. Thank you all for being part of this, helping me learn and grow, and I hope this series is doing the same for you. We'll meet again. Until then.